That means it's Mark Leiren Young's turn. Our Federation of BC Writers Spotlight tonight shines on prolific author Mark Leiren Young, famous for Orcas Everywhere, Orcas at the Sailor Sea, The Killer Whale Who Changed the World, and Never Shoot a Stampede Queen, a rookie reporter in the Caribou, among other books. Mark delighted and enthralled the audience at his Alberni Valley Words on Fire debut back in November 2018. And no doubt he can spellbind us again with his words. So please do so, Mr. Mark Leiren Young.
Nice, no pressure. No pressure I thought because playoffs and because orcas, it seemed like the appropriate thing to wear, and then I realized it doesn't show up on Zoom. So I'm broadcasting live from Atlantis. I thought that was the way to talk. I thought since we were going to talk orcas, and I decided, I know that's usually my thing. I know that, and I'm definitely going to talk orcas, but I thought I would kick off with something else first. And I'm just going to make sure this is going, because I just had another book published by Playwrights Canada Press. So this is my first play with Playwrights Canada Press, which is pretty much the best place in the country to get a script published, and I'm pretty thrilled about it. Oh, let's see, I'm disappearing on and off the Zoom screen. I think I've got half a head here. You know what? I'll make this go away. All right. Much less interesting background, but easier for me to show the book. So I just had this new book published. It's called Bar Mitzvah Boy. And this is my new play, and it was set to appear a whole bunch of places right now. And as you were saying in your introduction, then a certain pandemic changed a few things. So pre-apocalypse, this had some interesting productions lined up, and it was set to play Victoria in the fall. And now amazingly, I actually do have a production lined up in the US, and the play is going to be up in November on Zoom for subscribers of a theater in Buffalo, which is both cool and surreal. And I think I've got a virtual reading in St. Louis and a few other places that decided that the show was going to go on somehow, just not quite with audiences. So, here is the cover for Bar Mitzvah Boy. Let's see. Which was designed by my wife, Rain. And I thought I'd read you, this isn't quite the opening scene, but close enough. So I'm two different people. So you're going to have to imagine me as Joey. He's somewhere over 60, and the play's been produced, I think, a half dozen times now in Canada and the US. And my Joeys have ranged from about mid-60s to late 70s. And Michael is somewhere mid-30s or above. We're in a rabbi's office. It's late Friday afternoon. Joey's back is towards us. He's decked out in Jewish prayer regalia. I'll start that again. Rabbi's office, late Friday afternoon. Joey's back is towards us. He's decked out in prayer regalia, including tefillin, which are on incorrectly. He's checking the books and pulls one down, stops, pulls another, stops. He takes a hefty book and turns to face the audience, looking very much like the perfect rabbi. An old-style intercom buzzes, and we hear the voice of Cheryl. Rabbi, you've got a visitor. I said to wait in the hall, but Rabbi? Joey settles in behind the desk, relaxed, at home. He opens the book, flips the pages. Michael enters, sweaty from a run. And, excuse me. That's Michael. Hello? Michael stares at Joey, puzzled. What can I do for you? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm waiting for someone. I see. I have an appointment. Sorry to disturb you. Not a problem. I'm sure the receptionist can help you out. Or security. Absolutely. Michael reaches for the intercom. Shall I call security? I'm sorry, do you work here? I don't know everyone who works here. I can see that. Joey extends a hand. Michael shakes. Michael. So your parents wanted a boy. It means gift from God, or who is like God. It means your parents wanted a boy. I'm guessing yours did too. So what do you do here? This and that. I'm the rabbi, so more this than that. No. And you're in my chair? You're Rabbi Levitt Sharon? Sorry, you're Rabbi Levitt Sharon? Rabbi Michael Levitt Sharon. Like the Prime Minister, no relation. But you're not circumcised? Young? I was thinking young. Of course you were. Joey indicates her ball cap. And that's your kippah. So you cover your head all the time? You must be Mr. Brand. So you heard I was coming. I heard you wanted to see me today, and Cheryl told you I wasn't available because I'm never available Friday afternoons. I've got a service to prepare. Did she tell you it was an emergency? I told her to tell you it was an emergency. Did somebody die? No one I know. Is someone died? We're all dying. It's the human condition. So it's not an emergency, and it's almost Shabbat, and I really have to shower and change. This won't take long. I can see you next week, not on Friday. Once the sun goes down, I can't turn on the hot water. That's just silly. It is actually, but that's religion for you. An ancient tradition dating back to the great showers of Egypt. Also, the congregation will be wondering where I am. I'm here now. I'm dressed. I only need a minute. You look lovely. You should stay for the service. You kidding me? It's Friday night. Yes, that will be when we traditionally have our Friday night services. And you know what happens at sundown? Hell yeah, I remember this from Hebrew school. Cherry turns into a pumpkin and the horses turn back into mice. You have to go. I have to change. Now, if you want to talk next week, this will only take a second. Please, just 1 second, I promise. No? So you'll listen? Will you leave if I don't? You know my grandson, Benny, bright boy, sweet kid, the best. You know he's 12 and he's in your Hebrew school here. And 1 second. He's getting bar mitzvahed in November. He's getting bar mitzvahed here. Mazel tov. You don't know Benny? Can't Reuben teaches the kids? I don't meet most of them until they start coming to shul to prepare for the big day. Benny Brandt? Goldman. Ben Goldman. You're Sephora's dad? You know Sandy? From high school. I haven't seen her in years. Good. Perfect. That's perfect. Ben's getting bar mitzvahed here, not at the Sharat Tzedek. That's what it says in the invitations. You're Sephora's dad. She got her mother's looks. So Ben's getting bar mitzvahed in November. I suppose we'll see you then. Mazel tov. I've really got... That's the thing. There's something I need to do before Benny's bar mitzvah. It's okay, Mr. Brand. A lot of people forget their Hebrew. If you're doing an Aliyah, you don't need to worry. We have a sheet with all the Hebrew and transliteration, phonetic English. Not every Jew knows Hebrew anymore. Just come to a few services and you'll be fine. You don't strike me as the shy type. Transliteration. I like that. Is everything transliterated now? I really do need to change. She takes her hoodie off, keeps her ball cap on, and starts gathering clothes to change. It's not Benny's bar mitzvah I'm worried about. It's mine. What about yours? I need one. And it has to happen before Benny's. Maybe next week. I'm clear. Tuesday? Tuesday? Tuesday would be good, but I'm flexible. What day works for you? That's not how we do it. I'm dressed for it now. I'm not. You should stay for services. But it's Friday night in less than an hour. Poker night? And that's your regular poker outfit? Great place to hide an ace. So, yeah, that's kind of what kicks off Bar Mitzvah Boy. And the sort of accent I was putting on for Joey, I realized we're on Vancouver Island. Some of you may know the person who was set to play Joey in Victoria in the fall, and that's Howie Siegel, who runs Pagliacci's. So that was my best Howie Siegel impersonation. And, you know, we were set to open in September, so we were set to open next month. So this place, we were supposed to be in rehearsals right now. So the play is much on my mind. So that's Bar Mitzvah Boy. And when Jackie was mentioning anthologies, I am lucky enough to be in an amazing anthology right now that just came out. It is pretty much the top of the BC bestsellers list right now. It's called Spirits the Coast. And this is the official book to accompany the Orca exhibit at the Royal BC Museum. And probably, well, definitely one of the coolest gigs of my entire life was that I was hired to write the Orca exhibit at the Royal BC Museum. I've basically to guest curate. So I got to write, I got to help choose and suggest exhibits. It was an amazing experience. We worked on it for 3 years, and it was set to open in May. As you may have gathered, it did not open in May. Apparently, preparing orca skeletons is not considered an essential service. So I'm not sure why. I'm really not, but preparing a museum exhibit is not an essential service. So the exhibit's pretty much ready to go, except nobody was allowed to see an exhibit. So the exhibit, I hope, is now opening next year, and then it's set to tour the world for 10 years. But, well, the exhibit was not an essential service. The book was pretty much ready to go was pretty much at the printers when the world shut down. So the book came out, and there's no exhibit to go with it. So I'm going to give you some spoiler alerts for the exhibit. And I was invited to write for this, and it's an amazing group of writers. And let's see, I'm trying to, like, this was edited by the museum, and let's see, there's a piece by David Suzuki, there's a piece by Misty McDuffie, Kim Balcom, there's a poem by Bill Bissett. It's kind of Gary Geddes. I'm just looking at all the different authors. My friend Jason Colby, who wrote a book about orcas. And let's see, amazing image by Andy Everson, who I've also got in my book, Orcas Everywhere. And what I got to write was I decided I would do some biographies of some of the orcas featured in the book, or featured in the exhibit, and basically some of the most famous orcas in the world. And since Tahlequah is in the news right now, I thought I would kick off with Tahlequah's story. And here's my introduction, then it goes into a bunch of bios. We'll never know which orcas made waves for their communities beneath the surface, but here are 6 celebrity cetaceans who changed the way humans see and treat killer whales. And Tahlequah, a baby girl. The mother orca looked at her daughter and, thanks to her sense of echolocation, knew her baby wasn't healthy. She knew the breathing was too shallow, the heartbeat too weak. After swimming off Clover Point near Victoria for less than an hour, the beautiful little orca gasped her last, and the mother, known to humans as Tahlequah, dove to catch the body. Like so many mother orcas before her, Tahlequah set to show her dead calf to her family, J-Pod. Perhaps Tahlequah planned to show the body to the other pods as well, at a gathering of the clans called the Superpod. Instead, she showed her daughter to the world in what became known as a tour of grief. The 20-year-old Southern resident carried and cradled her daughter's body for 17 days as the world's media shared the story with a mix of fascination, horror, and guilt. Whether Tahlequah was talking to us or not, her message was clear. We did this. Some people claimed other orcas helped her carry her daughter, or they delivered foods the grieving orca could eat. We don't know. But what we do know is that she didn't drop her calf, and she didn't lose weight. So the idea that Tahlequah had help from her family seems more plausible than the possibility that she didn't sleep or eat for over 2 weeks, but didn't lose weight or sink from exhaustion. Thanks to Tahlequah's epic tour, the American and Canadian governments worked together with the Lummi Nation and a mix of organizations with varying views on captivity to try to rescue and rehabilitate one of Tahlequah's podmates, Scarlet. The spunky 3-year-old orca was starving, and because the world was watching, attempts were made to diagnose and treat her. It was a classic case of too little, too late. Warnings were sounded and ignored prior to Tahlequah stealing the media spotlight, but the idea of cross-border cooperation and marine park veterinarians working with anti-captivity organizations raised the possibility that humans could put their own politics aside to fight for the orcas. Tahlequah's tour set the stage for a new approach to saving the endangered southern resident orca population. The following year, Washington Governor Jay Inslee proposed putting over $1 billion into orca recovery, and the Canadian government declared they'd spend at least $200 million to help save the southern residents. In 2019, the month of June, which had long been known as Orca Awareness Month in Canada and the United States, was renamed Orca Action Month. Tahlequah accomplished what generations of human orca advocates couldn't. She shamed politicians into action. It remains to be seen whether her message was received in time. So Tahlequah is currently pregnant again. She's in the news, and one orca from each of the 3 pods, J, K, and L, each of the Southern resident pods, is pregnant. So we are hoping that we see another baby boom. And now, since it's actually what was advertised, I thought maybe I'd read just a little bit of Orcas Everywhere. So here's Orcas Everywhere. This also just came out end of last year. Let's see if I can move this so I'm not lose some of that glare behind me. All right. Humans like to claim we're the only species on Earth with emotions, but in 2018, the world watched as Southern resident orca Tahlequah mourned for her calf. Her daughter was the first calf born to the Southern resident in 3 years. The baby swam for less than an hour before dying, likely due to starvation. Tahlequah balanced the body on her nose for 17 days, carrying her for more than 1,000 miles. She showed her daughter's body to the other Southern residents and the world. Was it a funeral? Was it a message to us? Whatever the reasons, almost everyone agreed Tahlequah was grieving for her dead daughter. Lodi Budwill of the Center for Whale Researchers watched the other whales join Tahlequah in what looked like a funeral. The sun set, the moon rose, and they remained centered in the moonbeam, continuing their circular surfacing. I perceived this to be a ceremony or ritual of some sort. It was no doubt a circle of family love and devotion. So most people now admit whales can grieve. Other animals like elephants also mourn their dead. While Tahlequah was carrying her daughter's body, J-Pod stayed with her. Some people believe the other pod members took turns carrying the body. Others believe her pod mates fed her. Neither of these actions can be confirmed by official whale watchers, but Tahlequah didn't lose weight, even though she wasn't hunting. One trait humans have always used to prove we are on the top of the evolutionary chain is altruism, selfless concern for others. The idea is that only humans are wired to be nice. Scientists and philosophers have claimed this is not just a uniquely human trait, but ultimate proof of our humanity. Orcas and some other large whales have spindle neurons in their brains. These are cells that process emotions humans thought only existed in apes and us. Spindle neurons have been called the cells that make us human. They're the part of the brain that deals with complex emotions like love, guilt, grief, and even embarrassment. Since these are the cells that allow us to feel deeply, isn't it likely they do the same for orcas? And one sec. And I'm going to read just one more little bit. When the Vancouver Aquarium was waiting to harpoon an orca, Murray Newman mused that whales must be able to sense trouble. Ted Griffin, the first human to swim with an orca, was certain he had formed a psychic link with Namu. If you ask most people who've spent time around orcas whether orcas are psychic, they probably won't like the word because it suggests something supernatural. But almost every researcher has a story about an orca who did something impossible to explain. When Rain Banu set out to film Granny for our movie about her, Granny put on a show. As soon as Rain arrived with her camera, Granny greeted us with a tail slap, a spy hop, and 2 breaches. We were with 2 people who'd been whale watching for over 20 years. They'd seen Granny breach only a half dozen times, ever. But when we arrived, Granny performed like a movie star. Alexandra Morton wrote in her book, The Company of Whales, that the orcas she was looking to study showed up to greet her on her first day in Alert Bay, British Columbia. She also told me about the day her small boat was lost in the fog and several orcas she knew showed up and led her safely home. Ken Balcom has an almost identical story about being saved by a pod of the orcas he studied. In both cases, these are the only times orcas ever accompanied their boats at any length. The Nch'Alnuth people in Washington State say the spirits of their dead chiefs can transfer to orcas. The Kwakwaka'wakw in BC say the first human beings were orcas. The orcas came onto land, became people, and forgot to return home. The Haida in northern BC and Alaska say orcas show up for funerals. Indigenous stories used to be dismissed by non-Indigenous people as myths or legends, which makes it tough to explain why orcas keep showing up at Haida funerals. Just before writer Stephen Reed died on Haida Gwaii in 2018, 7 orcas appeared in the water nearby. His wife, poet Susan Musgrave, was sure they'd shown up to send him off. When Michael Biggs' ashes were scattered in Johnstone Strait, he's the scientist Biggs orcas are named after, 30 orcas arrived to witness the ceremony. Between 2011 and 2018, there have been 6 gatherings of orca lovers in Friday Harbor on San Juan Island. Each of these conventions is called Superpod in honor of the whales getting together. San Juan Island is one of the best places in the world to watch orcas, but the southern residents haven't been around much over the last few years. You can certainly never count on them showing up, except for Superpod. When J-Pod arrived on the first day of the 2018 event, people were happy but not surprised. On the final night, the Superpod people, including me, partied in Limekiln Point Park, and members of J-Pod showed up like they'd been invited. They have appeared at all 6 gatherings of the humans devoted to helping them. The night I decided to read part of this book to an audience for the first time ever, something impossible happened. I'd been invited to talk in the park at East Point on Saturna Island. I was sitting on the grass at almost the exact same spot where Joe Bauer and Sam Birch camped years ago as they waited to harpoon a whale for the Vancouver Aquarium. A few months before my talk, someone shouted whale, just like Joe Bauer did back when he saw Moby Doll in 1964. But it wasn't just a whale. It was J-Pod, Moby's family. This was the first time I had ever seen them swimming from the shores of Saturna, and they weren't just swimming. They were breaching over and over and over in the same spot where Moby was captured. For almost half an hour, everyone in the park watched the whales play. A few minutes after the whales swam off, I read the audience this chapter, except for this new paragraph. In Shakespeare's play Hamlet, the prince tells his pal Horatio, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." Orcas continually prove there are more things in the ocean than are dreamt of in our science. Cool. And I'm good for questions. I was counting that at 21 minutes. So I almost made my 20.
Wow, that was so fantastic, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any time you can make me cry, I guess, well, that shows the power of your writing and makes my nose go red. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. What I'm sorry, can you tell me again the date when they came to that spot where Moby Doll had been harpooned? When was that?
July 16th, 1964. And basically until July 16th, 1964, the basic feeling was that killer whales were monsters. If you got too close, they would kill you. And it was common practice to shoot them. If you saw them with a rifle, there was a few years before, there was a machine gun set up in Campbell River to take out the orcas that were eating the salmon. We were not big fans of orcas. So the Vancouver Aquarium was going to harpoon one to build a life-size model to put on display. Nobody imagined you could keep alive one because they were considered the most vicious creature on Earth. And then they accidentally caught Moby Doll and everything changed. But CBC TV reported that the Vancouver Aquarium had captured a monster. That was the news report on July 16th. Or on July 17th, I think was the news report. So basically, within a span of 24 hours, we went from killer whales are monsters to this whale coming into Vancouver and people falling in love almost immediately and global views on orcas changing. So that's what the killer whale who changed the world's all about.
Yeah, I kind of remember that. And when it happened, I was a teenager. So I have to say I was just absolutely taken with your readings, to the point that I got all my windows open. I was getting really cold, and I had to run to the bedroom and get a bigger shirt to put on because I didn't want to miss a word.
Nice.
So it's hard to get books out of the library these days, but I have found that, you know, you can put your name on the list and you can go pick up a book. So I'm going to look for orcas everywhere, and also Spirits of the Coast. I saw a write-up in the Vancouver Sun last week, and it's been on my mind to get that. So
it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's just like, it's a visually beautiful book, but it's also, the content's phenomenal.
I look forward to reading it. Thank you.
So yeah, I did bios of 6 orcas, and I decided I would try and tell the stories from the orca's point of view as much as possible, which I just wanted to experiment with. So I tried to get in their heads, or at least show the world as they were seeing it. They would have seen it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Mark,
Yeah.
when you talk, it's Linda here. When you talk about the them going to harpoon a whale, do you mean like with a real harpoon, or
Yes.
you mean they stab it to capture it?
No, they were trying to kill it. The plan was to harpoon it, and there was a Coast Guard vessel that was originally there with guns to shoot it once it was once the whale was harpooned, and then they were going to measure the body in the harbor, because no one had ever even gone close enough to an orca. Like, they wanted to examine the body into an anatomically accurate replica because they didn't exist. And part of what was going on was that BC had just wiped out the basking shark by declaring them a dangerous pest. And orcas had just been declared a dangerous pest by the federal government. So the aquarium had got a basking shark pretty much while they still existed. And they got a body of the basking shark, and they'd done a scale model with the Smithsonian. So the idea was to do the same thing before the federal government helpfully wiped out all our orcas.
Oh, that's so interesting, because my father-in-law was the captain on a fishery boat on the West Coast. And that's what their job was, to go and kill basking sharks. So I have his notebooks.
Oh my God. So he was on the Chilco Post. Or not, it was one of the, one of those ships with the spike.
Yes.
They had a spike on it. And they, oh,
Right,
wow.
it's horrifying. And didn't they find out that like basking sharks don't even eat fish?
Krill. They only eat krill.
Yeah.
But they ruin fishing nets.
They were so dumb.
The whole thing was that they would get tangled in fishing nets. So they were killed for ruining fishing nets.
Yeah.
And what was amazing was looking at all of the newspaper stories from that era. Nobody thought this was a bad thing, like wiping them out.
I know.
Like I was reading all the papers. It's like, what a fantastic thing. Yay, look at all the, and they were like reporting back on, I guess, your father-in-law's boat. Look at all the basking sharks we stabbed today. And this was reported as like a great thing, as like a great accomplishment.
I think the Alberni Valley Museum has the knife off the ship.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think they put it on display. Probably not.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
come and see it one day, Mark.
I will. Nobody seems to know where the machine gun was they had up in Campbell River. But I mean, what was crazy was the machine gun was after they had ruled out bombing. Like, they were going to bomb the orcas. They were going to strafe them. In Iceland, they had the U.S. military take out hundreds of them. Like, the Icelandic government got the U.S. military to take them out because they were eating too many herring. So, and this was the same era. So it was kind of, the story blew my mind, because to me it's first contact with an alien species. Because we really did go from going, oh my God, they're monsters, to wow, they're intelligent and kind of cute. It just, yeah.
And Mark, how did it change from harpooning them to
Loving them to death?
Pardon?
It kind of changed from hating them to loving them to death for a while. But what happened was Moby Doll didn't try to attack anybody. And everyone always thought, like, from the moment that whale was in captivity, they were terrified. Like the people who knew anything about whales had all been told they were savage monsters, and they were known as the only animal on Earth besides man that hunts for fun. And that reputation came from the way they take out other whales, the way that mammal-eating orcas take out other whales. And if you've seen the stories recently about like the local orca who was punting a seal into the sky, that was sort of seen as playing with their food. So they were known as the most vicious predator besides us. So when Moby Doll was on display, and briefly held at the Vancouver Dry Dock, Burrard Yarrow's Dry Dock, they used an actual 10-foot pole to give the whale antibiotics. So they were all very scared that at any moment the whale was going to come to its senses and kill people. It was amazing to me interviewing people who were told as children, the whales will get you even if you're up on land. Like, you're not safe. If there's an orca there, you're not safe and they'll kill you. And hearing these stories was just so mind-blowing and so cool. But really quickly, Moby wasn't aggressive, and they went from being terrified to eventually feeding the whale by hand. And all of this made the news, and the attitudes just shifted. And by the time Moby died, it was, Moby was eulogized as Vancouver's beloved pet whale, and just everything shifted. So it was just getting to know the whale and seeing Moby and going, not trying to kill us. Seems to be pretty smart. Wow, seems to be figuring things out. This is much more intelligent than we thought. And the two guys who brought the whale back were going, like, one of them's still alive. And he said one of the things that amazed them was if you read most of the stories, it talks about them towing the whale. And the only two people who took great offense at this term were the two fishermen, because towing means dragging. And one of the guys who was there, like I read them both quoted at the time, getting very upset when people say they towed the whale, and said, if we towed the whale, we would have killed it. You can't drag, we weren't dragging. The whale basically figured out what we were doing, went to the front of the boat, and they stayed at a specific distance in tandem. And they said it was like having a dog on a leash, that at no point they said there was one point where there was any kind of tightening of the line in 18 hours on the trip back to Vancouver. And they said they just went, like, they were falling in love with the whale as they were taking the whale back. And they were the guys who would be hired to shoot it. And when the whale didn't attack, they stopped shooting. So it was, so like they were the first ones who went, there's something here. There's something amazing here. And they didn't want to kill the whale, but that was their job. So it was a really interesting thing. It's a wild story.
Mark. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for having me. And great to be back in Char's Landing, even if it's virtually.
Yes, absolutely virtual, but still fun. Still great, still wonderful. Great to hear your wonderful stories again, Mark. You had me laughing with Bar Mitzvah Boy there.
I'm so glad. I thought you've got me doing so many serious things. I wanted to start off with something funny. So
absolutely.
Cool.
Very cool. So glad you could join us tonight.
Me too.
So, does that mean we're moving on to the rest of the open micers? I think so.
Yes.
So,
take off the jersey and get a Diet Coke, but I'm not going away.
All right, we'll see you soon.